It's time for Firehouse Tales. Some of these tales might actually be true. Most of these tales were heard by me second or third hand. Somebody talking about how a firefighter from Philly had come by their fire station and they just invited him in for lunch. And he had some tales to tell, and they're sharing those tales. Or else a story about a firefighter that once had worked for the department that had moved to, say, Garland, Texas, and came back for a visit for a barbecue and shared some stories. So a lot of these stories are second, third hand, and I tried to change the names and circumstances, protect the innocent. Well, today on Firehouse Tales, I'm going to recall a couple of stories that I heard of first fires. So these are first fire stories from guys who, actually some of them are no longer around. They've gone to the great firehouse in the sky, and others are retired. The first one was a firefighter named Dave, whose first fire was in the early 1990s, perhaps the late 1980s, and he described it like this. Went to the fire, and they were the second in engine company. There was already an engine company on the scene battling the fire, and he struggled to put on his air pack and his air mask and all of his gear, follow his lieutenant up to the door of the house, and smoke was still pouring out of the house. He got down low as he's trained and crawled on all fours, following the hose line that was already in there. And as he's following the hose line, he hears a phone ring. And he stops, and he looks, and there's a phone on the wall. And so he picks it up, and he says, "Hmm?" And he hears a voice on the other end of the phone asking, "Is so-and-so there?" And he doesn't know what to say, so he just mutters through his mask, "You'll have to call back later. They're not home right now." And he hangs up. He looks back at his officer, and his officer kind of shrugs his shoulders and urges him to keep on going. So he's following the hose line, and he sees a dim blue light up ahead. He just can't figure out what that is. As he gets closer, he realizes it's a firefighter that he knows named Mario, sitting on a coffee table in his full bunkers, in his bunker gear and helmet, and wearing an air pack and an air mask, breathing through the air mask. And the firefighter sitting on a coffee table wiping the ashes off the screen off of a TV. And there's a game show on called Wheel of Fortune. And he jabs a thumb at the TV screen and looks at firefighter Dave and says, "I love this show." Firefighter Dave just doesn't really know what to do. He looks back at his officers urging him on, so he keeps following the hose line. Finally, he gets to the end of the hose line, the nozzle, and he realizes the nozzle's been shut off, and he's looking around, and he's in a bedroom. And slowly the smoke is starting to lift, and he realizes that the fire's been put out. The fire was on the bed and involved part of the corner of the bedroom and some of the curtains by the window, and he realizes the window's been opened and the smoke is slowly venting out. The bed is all soaked, the walls are all wet, and he sees a light on, and he turns and he sees a door that's almost closed. And so he muscles open the door and peeks inside, and there's a firefighter who's taken off his air pack, but the air pack is still connected to his mask. He's still wearing his helmet and his air mask, breathing through the air pack, but he's taken his bunker coat off, and he's lowered his pants, and he's sitting on the toilet, going to the toilet, and he shouts as he's reaching for the door, "Do you mind?" Tries to close the door. So Dave hurriedly closes the door, looks back at his officer, and his officer for the third time just kind of shrugged his shoulders. Oh well. And that's the point that Dave always stopped and laughed and shared that story with us. His first fire, very memorable fire. Well, my first fire was an apartment fire, and it was also my driver was a firefighter, a man that you'll hear a lot of stories about. His name was John. He was from West Virginia. He spoke with a really thick accent. And I grew up in Missouri, and so the cultures of rural Missouri and West Virginia are very, very similar. And he and I had a lot of stories to tell, to share. Plus, my mother, for a while in her childhood, had lived in West Virginia. Every time she heard that John Denver song about West Virginia, she would always cry. So we had a lot of stories to share. Well, my first fire was his first fire as an acting driver. He wasn't an actual driver or an engineer, as we called him, the driver of the fire truck. But drivers were sick or on vacation, and so he got a temporary promotion. So he was an acting driver. He got the driver pay for that shift. And that was his first fire as a driver. My first fire as a firefighter, and my lieutenant had recently been promoted. It was his first fire as a lieutenant. Well, we responded, and smoke was just pouring out of this apartment, very crowded apartment complex. And we went and stretched a hose line into the apartment and went in. Very heavy smoke. We finally found the fire was inside a compartment, like a cabinet built into the wall of the apartment where the heater air conditioning unit was. And it was the heating air conditioning unit, what we call in Texas HVAC, heating ventilation air conditioning unit. That was what was on fire. Well, we tried to open up that compartment, that cabinet that was built into the wall, and we realized we were forcing it in, and obviously the door opens out. So we finally figured that out, opened the door out, and pried the door out and hit it with the hose after shutting off the breakers for the electricity, of course, put out the fire. And then we started struggling for windows, trying to find the windows. And we went into a room to the left of where the fire was, where there was a door right there we were aware of. We opened the door and struggled through, bumping into several objects. My lieutenant bumped into something hard and cursed. I could hear him. And I bumped into it shortly afterwards, just hit me right below the hip, left a bruise on my thigh. And I yelled at him, "What was that?" And he yelled back, "I think we're in the bathroom." And I looked, and sure enough, it was a sink that I'd bumped into, and there was a toilet right there in the corner. Well, soon we found a window, and we opened it up, and the smoke was just pouring out of the building, out of the apartment, out of the room that we were in. And we exited the apartment, waited a few minutes, got some water, disconnected our air packs, put on fresh bottles of air, so we could go back in, and went back in, and smoke had really cleared out by this time, and we could easily find our way around without bumping into things. And that room that we'd been in was not a bathroom, but a bedroom. And what he and I had bumped into was a table in the bedroom, a desk. And there was no toilet in the corner at all. But my brain, at the time, you're receiving so little information, you're only seeing very vague shapes through the heavy smoke. Your brain, my brain, just filled in the blanks from what it expected, because I expected it to be a bathroom. My lieutenant had shouted he thought we were in a bathroom. My brain just put a toilet there. Very interesting situation for me, and I thought about that for a while afterwards. Well, another friend of mine named Art, very interesting guy, very brilliant guy, but painfully shy. His first fire was a trailer house, and trailer house fires, mobile home fires, very, very fast moving. Those structures, portable structures, are what we call built to burn. They burn very easily. He grabbed an axe and you're always told to grab something when you're a rookie. Back in the 1990s, when I first joined the fire service, and usually I grabbed an extinguisher. That was on the seat next to me when I'd be running into a building. So usually I'd have the extinguisher and the fire hose, and perhaps it'd be something that we could just hit real quick with the extinguisher, or there'd be electronics or something. We wouldn't want to use water. We could use the extinguisher. A lot of guys would grab an axe. Well, Art always grabbed the axe. So he grabbed an axe and the fire hose, ran towards the fire, and just skillfully began cutting with the axe around the outside door jamb of the trailer house. And those trailer houses, a lot of them are filled with aluminum sheeting on the outside of the house. Very easy to cut through with an axe. So he'd cut through most of one side of the door jamb and most of the other side of the door jamb, getting ready to just pull the entire door away, when his officer walked up from behind him and tried the doorknob, and the door opened. He had almost cut the entire door away from the trailer house, but the doorknob was unlocked. Always check the door, fellas. Always check the door. Well, I really am going to enjoy sharing these Firehouse Tales with you. One thing I want you to remember is when I joined the fire department in the 1990s, the fire department I was in was all male, all men. There were several women in nearby departments, and we never had any problem working with them. Women officers, women firefighters, women drivers, or engineers, as we officially called them. Never had any problem with women in the fire service, as long as they could handle themselves, and wouldn't be a problem. The thing is that for us, we had so many problems with our own guys. A lot of people think that firefighters, you can picture the firefighters you see on the calendars, the real muscular, very trim firefighters. A lot of people think of that as your typical firefighter, but actually those guys that work out with the weights a lot, they would often pull a muscle, or they'd have a bad knee, or they would just suck down an air bottle in just like 10 or 12 minutes. The guys that were really prized, the guys that were really treasured in the fire service when I joined, were long distance runners. So if you could have a woman that would be like a long distance runner, that could make an air bottle last 20-25 minutes, and would be able to function in an intelligent manner, in a predictable manner, it'd be wonderful, because we had so many guys that were unreliable that we worked with. So that was the attitude of the guys when I first joined. I never was aware of any problems of sexual harassment or anything like that. There was also no teasing of the rookies. There was no hazing or anything like that. Very, very professional fire department when I joined. Well, I'm going to enjoy sharing these stories with you. I hope you keep in mind that these are recollections of before and after 9/11. The fire service changed. I witnessed a great deal after 9/11. And before 9/11 was kind of an innocent age, sort of like Andy Griffith Police Department before the 1970s, and after the terrorism of the 1970s, police departments